Hello? Okay, this seems to be working. Right. Last time we did this, I wasn't feeling the best and had to cut it halfway through. So here's hoping it's different this time. Today we're going through Monk. Quick TLDR on what think of Monk in general. Monk is up there as one of the ones I've been trying to play for a while now, and it's not been because of anything with the actual class that I've not played it. It's literally just been stories that have been better. But it's always been that, that kind of. That's what my first backup character is. In fact, I think in the last three campaigns that I have been a part of, my backup character has been a monk of some variety. I have a backup character in the one that I'm currently in. I have a backup character in the one that we haven't even started yet, and I have a backup character in the one we've technically already finished now. It's a very very cool class. I mean, who doesn't want to in a world of magic and incredible feats of swordsmanship just be punching somebody? It very much is similar to the samurai subclass in the sense that it sacrifices um, damage for just a ton of attacks, except doesn't have as much of a focus on accuracy as samurai does. Right then, I think that's a decent amount of preamble. Let's go into it. First one is Ascended Dragon. Ascended Dragon came in the Fizzband one, so it's relatively new. I kind of think of it as new, but I think it might be like 3 books old now. Let's have a look at the first ability. Um, First ability, Draconic Discipline. You can channel draconic powers to magnify your presence and imbue your unarmed strikes with the essence of a dragon's breath. You gain the following benefits. If you fail an intimidation charisma roll or persuasion charisma roll, you can use your reaction to re-roll the check as you tap into the mighty presence of a dragon. Once this feature turns the failure into a success, it can't be used again until a long rest. What's quite interesting about this is you can see it's a newer one because a lot of these abilities used to say you get to re-roll the check and then you can only do that once per long rest. And now they've added this little extra thing that I think isn't. This isn't a part of how the power creep and is instead part of just like convenience, in my opinion. Which is this one goes, oh, you only use it if you succeed. I like that. The dragons being intimidating and also being persuasive works in the sense of that's kind of what the two halves of dragons are, like the metallic and the chromatic. Although, I mean, people would argue that the gem dragons are also a part of this, but they've only recently just become back into the lore, so they're kind of another thing. You also get Draconic Strike. When you damage a target with an unarmed strike, you can change the damage type to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. So it's sort of going into that draconic thing again, giving you effectively, I think that's all the damage types you can get in a breath weapon from a dragon. I quite like both of these abilities. One of them's like this little convenient ability that'll come up occasionally that'll be quite fun. Um, Another one is an ability that just allows you to make your attacks occasionally be like antithesis to what you're fighting. Notably, it seems based on what it's saying here that it doesn't seem to have a timing restriction on it. In the sense that I don't know if you can change it once you get it, or whether it's as you punch you get to choose what type. I'm going to assume, based on the fact that I think they're going with the idea of you sort of learning under a dragon or learning dragon-esque techniques, that it's not. It's going to specify that you choose at that point what kind of damage type you have, and you stick with it. But either way, it's a very good ability, and also you get Draconic, which it just makes sense. All three of these abilities, just this ability on its own, is honestly fine. That would be enough. I quite like these abilities. You can very much see that this is a later one because of how much you're getting both as like little abilities that just give narrative flavor, and also just with like little convenient parts to the abilities. But you also get the Breath of the Dragon, which is you can channel destructive waves of energy, like those created by the dragons you emulate. When you take the attack action, you can replace one of them with effectively a breath weapon. You choose a type. Each creature makes a dex saving throw equal to your key save DC, and they take equal to 2 rolls of your martial art die on a fail and half as much on a success. So this ability effectively, at worst, does equivalent to you hitting them once, because it's 2 rolls, and if they succeed, you would only get hit by half that damage. You can use this equal to a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So at this point it'd be like 2, but max it'll be 5. Get back on a long rest. You can also spend 2 key points to use this feature again. That probably won't come up too often, because 2 key points is a lot of key points for the monk. I like this ability. Narratively, it makes sense. It sounds really cool. Like you're producing energy from your fists, using your ki blast as like a line of lightning, or a spray of acid. It's very, very cool and thematic. Yeah, I'm a big fan of all of these abilities. They don't seem overpowered, they don't seem underpowered, and they give you a lot of flavor. The next ability is Wings Unfurled. When you use your Step of the Wind, which, to those who don't know, is as a bonus action, as a monk, you can spend a key to use Step of the Wind, and it allows you to bonus action disengage or bonus action dodge. No, just disengage and dash. The dodge one is a different one. So this is effectively saying when you use a key point to bonus action dash or disengage, you can unfurl spectral draconic wings. While these wings exist, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. And you get them back on a long rest. So this is a cool 6th level ability that just gives you a bit more movement on a class that does really, really like movement. As you can see here, if you haven't read my review of monks before and saw this, is they have this whole thing about unarmed movement. And as you can see, they get progressively more and more unarmed movement. So having it where not only do you have this increased movement speed, you also get the ability to go up, traverse like height, which can be a bit hard to represent, especially if you're playing online, but it can be theatre of the mind. You can go high, you can go down a cliff, and land at the bottom of a large fall. It just gives you a bit more use. It's not a fantastically interesting ability, but it's not a bad ability. I don't hate it. 11th level ability. The power of the Draconic Spirit now radiates from you, warning your allies or inspiring fear in your enemies. As a bonus action, you can create an aura of Draconic power that radiates 10 feet from you for 1 minute. For the duration, you can gain one of the following effects of your choice. When you create this aura as a bonus action, on subsequent turns, you can choose a creature within the aura. The target must succeed on a Wiz save against your key save DC or become frightened for 1 minute. They can repeat the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a successful save. So you get yourself a bonus action Frighten ability, which isn't bad. I would say that at 11th level, increasingly you're going to see more and more stuff that are like immune to Frightened. It's a very common thing to give monsters and for monsters to have in just in general. Just because if they're frightened, and more so with the bosses in fairness, but if you they try and give them either strong resistances or immunities to stuff that can effectively trivialize a fight. So this one effectively, at worst, makes them lose a turn. Well, not at worst. At worst, it does nothing. But if they fail, they at worst lose a turn. At best, like at best for you. Sorry, I'm talking as if you're the player. At best, it's on for like a minute. So that's 10 turns of just you being able to do whatever you want. Now, this isn't... Frightened is slightly better than some of the other conditions, like petrified or, I don't know, like incapacitated, in the sense they can still do attacks. It's just they're going to have disadvantage on all of them. And this includes like legendary actions if they also have an attack. And if you're further away from them, like if you're not within melee range of them and they are a melee predominantly character, it could mean that they've effectively just stunned on the turn because they can't get within, they can't willingly move closer to you. Or you can have choose a damage type when you activate the aura: acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. You and your allies have resistance to that damage. Now that's quite useful because if you know that you're in a situation where you're dealing with one of the elemental evil cults, say for example, you're going to know predominantly what damage type they're doing. If you're dealing with the elemental evil of fire cult, you go to this, you use your bonus action, you go, I now have an aura of resistance to fire damage. It could fundamentally make it so that in this fight, you and all your allies have, double your health. This is an interesting ability. I feel like the range on the aura is a bit low. They do have to be relatively close to you. I think it could be 20 feet and it wouldn't have been too powerful. But overall, I don't mind this ability. I think this ability and the Wings Unfurled ability both feel like they're a bit, I guess, underwhelming. You know, maybe the wings one narratively will look cool, but I don't know. They don't excite me, but I don't hate them. Ascended aspect, and sorry, to go back to those abilities, you don't expect that on the sort of the middle abilities, because the middle abilities, they've got you with whatever the base ability is. They do front load it a lot. But I don't know. Normally they at least have something there that's a bit interesting, but they don't interest me that much. This is the final ability, the Ascended Aspect. Your draconic spirit reached its peak. You gain the following benefits. When you use the Breath of the Dragon, you can spend 1 key point to augment its shape and power. The energy can become either a 60-foot cone or a 90-foot line that is 5 feet wide. And each creature in that area takes damage equal to 4 rolls of your martial art die on a failed save, or half as much on a successful save. So what's really interesting that I haven't talked about this Breath of the Dragon ability is just passively, because of the line of how much damage it does is 2 rolls, and with this one 4 rolls of the martial art die, it scales a certain amount of time. And because it's that didn't make too much sense, so I'll say it again. It scales pretty well. And because it's an AoE, it'll feel a lot better, because you'll have a situation where, and at least in my experience, where you'll be dealing with 4, maybe 5, and with a cone, if your group stays together, the enemies most of the time stay together. And with this speed, and with the fact you can bonus action disengage by spending a key point, you can put yourself in an advantageous position where you can hit them on your turn, go attack, but I change this one to a breath weapon, and it hits 4 of them for two rolls of my martial art die, which, say at this point, even at this point when you're getting to the later game stuff, 60-foot cone, you're dealing with maybe like 7 people, and you get them in this cone. It does 4 rolls of a martial art die. Your martial art die at that point, it's a D10, so it's 4d10. It goes, okay, say half of the 7 people succeed. I tell you what, no, let's be more realistic, because your DC isn't that high. Let's say all but 2 of them succeed. So 5 of them succeed. All they take on average, so on average on a D10 is a 6. You times that by 4, you've got yourself 24 damage. So all of those take 24 damage. 24 times 5 damage. Because you're hitting 5 people with this ability. Even then, that's what, like, upwards of 120 damage. And that's not even counting the 2 people that are going to get hit for the full amount, which will be... Well, no, they'll get hit. Never mind. Anyway, sorry, I said that wrong. It wouldn't be that much. It would be like 50 something, right? Because I forgot to half it. Then you'd add the 20 something onto it. So it'd do about 70 damage. Doing 70 damage from one attack is huge. Especially for a martial class. And you could technically, if you wanted to, the amount of ki that you would have, because the ki at this point you would have would be, you'd have like 17, right? I just noticed it goes with the level. I probably noticed that when I was doing the thing, but I just noticed that again. That's very convenient. You could go like, okay, all it says here is you get to when you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace one of your attacks with it, right? You can bonus action attack. Because if you spend a key point on Flurry of Blows... Oh, interesting. No, never mind. But still, what you get to do this attack, then you get to do a couple of attacks. Probably about 4 attacks in addition. It does a significant amount of damage. In addition, by the way, I do like the augment breath, and I do like the breath weapon thing. In addition, you get blind sight of 10 feet. Within this range, you can effectively see anything that isn't behind total cover, even if you're blinded or in darkness. Moreover, you can see an invisible creature within that range, unless the creature successfully hides from you. Blind sight's really useful. This ability is a bit lackluster because there's a fighting style that I feel like gives you a very, very similar ability. It's either 5 feet blind sight or 10 feet blind sight, and I think it's 10 feet. So that feels a bit lackluster, but it's still a very cool ability to have. You also get Explosive Fury. When you activate your aspect of the worm, Draconic Fury explodes from you. Choose a number of creatures you can see within your aura. Each creature must succeed on a dex saving throw against your key save DC, or take 3d10 of this choice of damage. What's funny is this ability, it's an AoE, right? And you can choose... It's better than AoE because you just choose people you can see. So it is easier to get off, but it's actually less damage than you'd get from your breath weapon. But it is just a free feature. I quite like this. I really like the augment breath ability. I don't mind the blind sight ability, although it's been a bit weirdly for a newer class. I feel like it's a bit useless, or it's been not useless, but it's been outscaled. And I quite like this Explosive Fury ability. Overall, Aspect of the Dragon, very, very fun. One of the newer ones which solves a lot of the problems earlier subclasses have. It scales pretty well with its abilities. I think the middle abilities, the unfurling of those spectral wings for flying speed and the aspect of the worm are a bit. I think they're a bit lackluster, but it's kind of what you expect from middle abilities, and I'm sure the longer this goes on, the more I'm going to realise that they're not that bad. Overall, I'm a big fan. Next is Astral Self. I've had a look at Astral Self. In fact, one of my backup characters is an Astral Self monk in one of the campaigns. It's really, really cool. The logic behind it is kind of like if you've ever seen, JoJo, that kind of stuff, where they have the stands and it's like, the one that just repeatedly does the fists and goes, oh, 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 oh. It's kind of what you get from this in a certain extent. I'm sure it's actually representing some freaking like ancient Eastern traditional belief, but still, that's what I thought. Or like Asura's Wrath. I also thought of that, which is actually probably a bit more of an apt thing to think of. First ability. Your mastery of your key allows you to summon a portion of your astral self. As a bonus action, you can spend one key point to summon arms of your astral self. You can see where I'm getting this Asura's Wrath from. When you do so, each creature of your choice that you can see within 10 feet of you must succeed on a dex saving throw or take force damage equal to 2 rolls of your martial art die. So it kind of gets a similar thing to what the aspect of the worm eventually becomes. Except it's weaker, obviously, because that was a much later ability. But it does force damage, which is arguably, I don't even think arguably, I think statistically it's the best damage that you can normally get, barring some of the stupid damages that you can't realistically get as a player. While these spectral arms are present, you gain the following following benefits. You can use your wisdom modifier in place of your strength modifier when making strength checks and strength saving throws. Very useful because your wisdom will be one of your higher stats. Because it's not only used for your DC, but it's used for your unarmed, what is it called? Unarmed movement? No. Called unarmed defense. You can use your spectral arms to make unarmed strikes. I don't know how often that comes up. I guess narratively they might be magical. Is maybe my thinking for it? Oh, sorry, it's the next line. Literally the next line. Sorry, I'm not very good at reading. When you make an unarmed strike with the arms on your turn, your reach is 5 feet greater. So it allows you to not initiate the melee combat, which means that you don't need to waste a key point potentially disengaging. The unarmed strikes you make with the hands, you can use your wisdom modifier in place of your strength or dex for the attack, damage rolls, and the damage type is force. Okay, so this is very, very, very powerful. As you can see, it only gets one ability because the previous one was not nearly as powerful, so it got 2. Not only does this do an initial, you spend 1 key point, but that's probably fine. You're always probably going to do that. Not only does it give you that initial burst of damage, which isn't insignificant, because it's never going to be insignificant when it's rolling your martial art die, because your martial art die is never insignificant amounts of damage. But also, it goes strength, which probably is going to be, and the at absolute least is going to be your 4th highest stat. Probably going to be much lower because the sort of belief of, or the general look of an Eastern style monk is to be a bit on the thinner side, with more kind of like a swimmer body look. Not only does it go, you don't need to use strength for those things. The occasional strength check you will have to do. You can use your wisdom. The strength saving throw one probably will come up because that can be used in, I think, opposed grappling checks, or if you were trying to do. I've seen occasionally my DMs have used it for certain AoEs that haven't necessarily been like magical. Not only do you get that, you also get the extra reach. Very, very useful, especially if you already have a tank of some variety. Let's say like a paladin fighter, somebody who's staying in the front lines. You can sort of be in the back line, being kind of an off tank for when they have a problem and they're a bit low on health. But also you can just be a really decent damage dealer. Monks are very good at damaging people, especially early on. But also it becomes force. And if for some reason your dex isn't that as powerful as your wisdom is, you can now use your wisdom instead. Having your damage be force damage is absolutely huge. I used to be a bit, and still to a certain extent, I'm a bit low on any ability where it's just like your damages now do your damage type is now like fire or cold instead of normal, like bludgeoning, piercing, slashing. But I realized that I might have been in campaigns that were a bit more likely to give you they were a bit more likely to give you magical weapons than I think is actually normal. And there is situations now where having a non-magical weapon has come up. So having that where you do force damage is a very useful ability. Visage of the astral self. You can summon the visage of your astral self. As a bonus action, or as part of the bonus action, you can take to activate the astral self. Sorry, I've broken that up. As a bonus action, or as part of a bonus action where you take the Arms of Astral Self ability, you can spend 1 key point to summon the visage for 10 minutes. It vanishes early if you're incapacitated or die. So this one is 10 minutes, and this one is also 10 minutes. So in addition to having the arms, you can also summon the visage, and that's sort of like a helmet, I'm more partial to a mask. I think the idea of this is such a cool visual thing, in my opinion. While the spectral visage is present, you gain the following benefits. You can see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical, to a distance of 120. So not only does it boost your vision, what vision you normally have, because most people have like 60-foot vision passively, and then most dark visions are about 60 foot. It gives you like one of the best dark vision distances, in addition to increased normal distance of sight, which is quite good. Wisdom of the spirit. Your advantage on insight, wisdom, insight, and charisma intimidation checks. Quite like that because normally, and quite weirdly, charisma intimidation things. Intimidation to me doesn't come up too much because I feel like it should be based more on like a lot of DMs base their like skill checks on whatever they are base related to, if you know what I mean. So at base, an intimidation skill check is based on charisma. But I feel like if you're super super strong and buff and look scary, it should be based on strength. So I don't find intimidation comes up more, but the fact that you can now you put on this scary mask and it gives you advantage on intimidation makes complete sense. Also, when you speak, you can direct your words to a creature of your choice that you can see within 60 feet of you, making it so only they can hear it. Alternatively, you can amplify your voice so that all creatures within 600 feet of you can hear it. Quite like this ability narratively. I believe me, I will keep using narratively wrong every time. Um, before anyone mentions that, because a lot of people play it where you go quite realistic and say, oh, well, if you say anything to in combat to another character, um, the other people can hear it because that's realistic. Um, whereas we kind of play it, and I know this is weird, we play it where, obviously that's true, but we do a lot of sort of out of character talking about like strategy, which realistically we should do in world. Uh, with this ability, it probably never really comes up in combat for us, but for other people that would be a really useful ability because it's like actually I can talk strategy with these people without at least one side of the strategy without even alerting the enemies. And I think the amplifying part of it will come up the same way I feel like the other ability, the sort of I can speak and set it only to one person ability, will come up for our campaign in the sense that both of those abilities in our kinds of campaigns will come up narratively more in the sense of in role play. Like we're talking to a noble and he's a bit tricksy and I know a secret and I want to get it across to my ally. Admittedly, I have to do a bit of jumping through a few hoops to get that example to work because I would have a huge mask on. But I could see a situation where everybody is discussing and it's getting really heated and no one can talk, and then I put on the mask and I amplify my voice and I go, "Everybody stop!" As like, other person take the floor, that kind of stuff. I can see that coming up. I see that coming up more. You see, that's the kind of abilities that I feel like are not as like shock wow abilities that you get at third level and you get at the very end, but they also don't feel like the Astral Dragon abilities that felt a bit lackluster. Maybe it's just because you got more of them. Body of the Astral Self. When you have both your astral arms and visage summoned, you can cause the body of your astral self to appear. This spectral body covers your physical form like a suit of armor. So as you can see, all of these abilities are kind of encasing you in more and more of this sort of astral body, which I really, really like narratively as well. So I think more when I was talking about the JoJo stuff and saying it's kind of like that, I think actually it's very much more like Asura's Wrath because it feels like you're more becoming like that. I really like this subclass. I really do want to play this at some point. While you're in the spectral body, sorry, I blanked out there for a second. While you're in the spectral body, you gain the following benefits. When you take acid, cold, fire, force, lightning, or thunder, which is what else? Is that all the sort of magical damage types? I guess psychic's not there, and is that it? It might just be that's it. You can use your reaction to deflect it. When you do so, the damage you take is reduced by 1d10 plus your wisdom modifier. Now, what's interesting about this ability is it's very similar to what you just get base as a monk, because you get deflect missiles at third level, as you can see here, and it has the same thing except you don't get this on the energy one, your monk level. And it doesn't have this ability where if you hit 0 you can use a key point to throw it back. Which is interesting. I like that the logic is that now with the astral self you can interact with like magical based abilities more and you can even deflect them. I think that's a pretty cool ability. Once on each of your turns, when you hit a target with your Arms of Astral Self, you can deal extra damage to that target equal to your martial art die. So one of your attacks every turn has an extra martial art die rolled on it. That's a nice little bonus ability. I don't think I'm super impressed by the Body of Astral Self ability. I think Deflect Energy will be fun and it will come up more. It means you can use Deflect Missiles a lot more than you would normally do. And this one doesn't have a limiter on it. Just your bonus action. That. I don't know if the base Deflect Missiles does. Oh, it doesn't either. But what I like about this ability is normally abilities at this level would have equal to your proficiency bonus ability on there. So I quite like these. I can't say I quite like them. I think they're interesting. They just don't. They don't like spark loads of ideas in my head of really cool ideas, except for the narrative behind it, which I do love. Finally, Awakened Astral Self. Your connection to your astral body is complete, allowing you to unleash its full potential. As a bonus action, you can spend 5 key points to summon the arms, visage, and body of your astral self and awaken it for 10 minutes. Notably, this effect that you're getting is only costing you 2 extra key points. Because to get... Wait, it might be 3. 3 extra key points. Because you need to spend 1 key point to get the arms, 1 key point to get the mask. And so you'd only be using 3 extra to this because you get the arm, the visage, and the body in addition to it. While your astral self is awakened, you gain the following benefits. Plus 2 AC, never bad. When you use the extra attack feature to attack twice, you can instead attack 3 times if all the attacks are made with your astral arms. I see. So you get yourself the ability to hit for... Normally, you would have it where you'd attack once, and then it would give you the bonus action to attack again. That's just an inherent thing that you get. You make one bonus action. And then you get extra attack. Well, sorry, before that you get Flurry of Blows, where it's immediately after you take the attack action, you spend 1 key point to make 2 unarmed attacks as a bonus action. So you get to 3 at second level as well. And then you get to this ability, extra attack, which just means, okay, now you're at 4. And this goes, okay, screw it, go to 5. As long as you use the arms, which you have no reason not to use the arms. So it's not as impactful as you would expect from a capstone ability, but it does what... It does a decent amount. An extra 2 AC, it's not insignificant. I like the narrative behind it's become so complete that like it physically can block attacks now, and so you have extra armor. I like having the extra attack. That those are, an extra D10. It'll add up, Overall, I absolutely love Astral Self. It's one of my favorites. It has a cool combination of in-combat abilities and out-of-combat abilities, giving you all those skills that you have like a little extra bits on. And the amplifying voice thing was quite interesting. Overall, I really have no complaints about it. Except for maybe its capstone feature. Right, next is the Way of the Cobalt Soul. So we're going through a lot of the newer ones because surprisingly, alphabetically they are just earlier. This one is the Matt Mercer one. I recognise it from the few bits of Critical Role I've watched. Not that I hate Critical Role, by the way. It's just that I like to have campaigns on as a background thing, and I feel like if I miss anything in Critical Role, that I've missed this huge part of it. Like, you don't want to miss a single bit of it, but I can't deal with I can't deal with just focusing on on somebody playing a campaign. It's not. I can't engage like that. Anyway, starting at 3rd level, you can strike pressure points to induct intuit crucial information about the character. I'm guessing it means find out. When you hit a creature with one of your attacks, one of the attacks granted by your flurry of blows. So you got to spend the key point to get flurry of blows. You can analyze it. When an analyzed creature misses you with an attack, you can immediately use your reaction to make an unarmed attack if it's within your reach. The benefit lasts until you finish a long or short rest. Additionally, when you analyze a creature, you learn about all its damage vulnerabilities, damage resistances, damage immunities, and condition immunities. Okay. That's a very interesting ability. So not only do you get a load of information that we've seen other classes get, like I think Battle Master gets it off the top of my head, but in addition, you get this cool reaction that you get where it's like, it very much feels like you're dealing with a martial art master, which I quite like. He's always very good at making flavorful stuff, but it's like it's fast movements, and they hit away when he attacks and immediately get one jab in, and the jab individually isn't doing a lot of damage, but it's adding up. I quite like it narratively. It's not a big deal that you have to spend on flurry of blows, because a lot of the time you'll be using it on flurry of blows. At least I will. Extort Truth. Starting at 6th level, you can precisely strike a hidden cluster of nerves on a creature, temporarily paralyzing it from masking its true thoughts and intent. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you can spend 1 key point to force it to make a charisma saving throw. On a failed save, the creature is unable to speak a deliberate lie, and all charisma checks directed at the creature are made with advantage, up until 10 minutes. For up to 10 minutes. You know if you succeeded or failed on its saving throw. An affected creature is aware of the effect, and thus can avoid answering the questions to which it would normally respond with a lie. Such a creature can be evasive in its answers as long as the effect lasts. If you wish to impose the effect on a creature without injuring it, you can attack the creature simply by touching it, dealing no damage on hit. So this is an interesting ability, because it's actually both in combat and out of combat ability. Because in combat, you hit them, you give them disadvantage effectively on charisma saving throws, or charisma checks, and then they're in a situation now where you can extort the stuff from them while in combat. But more specifically, because actually I read it, while reading that through, I see it doesn't give you disadvantage on it on charisma checks. I thought it would. More specifically, using it out of combat as like an interrogation thing. It's quite interesting. So you can effectively get a zone of truth, which is very, very, very cool. Yeah, I can see that being used a bit. The more I read it, the more I'm a bit iffy on. I don't mind it. It's not great. It's not bad. Also, you get Mystic Erudition. Erudition. Sorry if I said that wrong. You have extensively studied the history and lore within the archives of the Cobalt Soul. You learn one language of your choice, you gain a proficiency with one of the following skills of your choice, and if you already have proficiency in one of the listed, you can choose to double it. You can get yourself expertise, or another skill, and another language. That's really nice. Little out of combat thing. Allows you to do a lot more. Makes sense narratively, because I think the Cobalt Soul is just like a huge font of ancient like knowledge. I think the logic is that they're like the monks that just sort of like keep track of everything. Large libraries in their monasteries and stuff. At 11th level, you get yourself an additional language, an additional skill proficiency, or an additional expertise if you don't want that. Cool. Um, I feel a bit lackluster about these extra skill proficiency things because they're cool, but they could be something more unique to your character instead of just making you more jack of all trade. I guess the logic behind this is kind of like an information jack of all trade monk, but I don't know. I feel like there's cool like narrative abilities you can give them, like maybe the ability to touch something and learn the history of it using key would be interesting. Also, Mind of Mercury. Starting at 11th level, you've honed your awareness and reflexes through mental aptitude and pattern recognition. Once per turn, if you've already taken your reaction, you may spend one key point to take an additional reaction. You can only use one reaction per triggered effect, sorry. Now this is very, very interesting and very, very potentially powerful. So what you can have a situation, if I'm reading this correctly, where somebody attacks you, they miss, you use your reaction, you hit them, they attack you again with their second attack, they miss, you spend a key point to get your reaction back and punch them again. So you can properly do the whole kind of like, Jackie Chan-esque, that kind of Eastern martial arts kind of, I hit you so many times and every time you try and hit me, I hit it away and punch you kind of thing. Which I do like that aesthetic. I like that bit and I don't particularly like the other bit because I just think there's more interesting ways. Especially now seeing the 17th level ability, which is just it again. I would have been more interested in abilities that didn't say you just got a skill, but instead gave you cool information-based abilities. So yeah, 17th level you get you get the mystic thing again. In addition, you get deliberating barrage. Upon reaching 17th level, you gain the knowledge to manipulate a creature's ki to undermine their fortitude. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you can spend 3 key points to cause the creature to gain vulnerability to one damage type of your choice until the end of it a turn in which it has taken a damage of that type. If the creature has resistance to the damage type you choose, the resistance is suppressed for 1 minute rather than giving vulnerability. The creature that is immune to the damage type you choose is unaffected. The creature who is affected by this feature cannot be affected by it again for 24 hours. So what this effectively does is goes, either I hit you once, I now make you vulnerable to bludgeoning, for example, and then every attack I do effectively is double damage. Or I hit you once, I make it so my friend whose turn is next, their very powerful spell, let's say Fireball, although at 17th level Fireball wouldn't be this impactful, you're now resistant to fire damage. And then I repeat my punching, but all that stuff. But now on my friend's turn, I can boom hit you with double damage Fireball. I like this ability because it can help allies and it can help yourself. Yeah, I think that's a very cool capstone ability. Overall, I really, really, really like this ability. Really, really like this ability. I really, really like the sort of line of that. So, this as well, like this ability, and I really, really like this ability. I like the combat abilities it gets, but the out of combat abilities feel, and this is rare for me to say for a Matt Mercer one that's really, really normally really flavorful. It's a bit boring in my opinion. Overall, Cobalt Soul, very, very interesting, very, very fun. If you want to go Jack of all trades, but you don't want to go Bard and you don't want to go Rogue, this is another option. Drunken Master. Now I think we're getting to the older ones. Yeah, this one's a Xanathar one. So you can probably guess what Drunken Master is. You've seen it a lot and stuff. It's where unlike what commonly I think people think, they don't actually drink. I think this one makes that mistake as well. They instead act in an unpredictable way as if drunk to sort of make sure that it's harder for you to predict where they're going to punch you. When you choose this tradition at 3rd level, you gain proficiency in performance, which makes sense because technically you are putting on a performance when you are doing your Drunken Master, because you aren't actually getting drunk. I like that they sort of mentioned that. You gain proficiency with brewing supplies if you don't already. You see, I know what they're doing when they're saying brewing supplies. They're gonna go into the more actually you're drinking thing, which it's fine. It just, a little part of me is like, oh, but that's not actually how it works. Also at 3rd level, you learn how to twist and turn quickly as part of your flurry of blows. When you use flurry of blows, you gain the benefit of the disengage action, and your walking speed is increased by 10 feet. I like it. It makes it so you're a lot more, you're an even faster, even, I guess, yeah, even more like interesting, like monk. Because not only do you have it where you're hitting a lot of attacks, you also have it where you're leaving combat, you're moving, you're constantly dancing, which I quite like. It makes a lot of sense narratively. These two abilities, I mentioned it before, and it would be hypocritical to not mention it now. But when you just get this, and you just get this, it's just the 2 proficiencies. I think it's a bit of a cop out, but they do it a lot. This ability, really, really cool. No problem with this ability. Right, next ability is Tipsy Sway. Starting at 6th level, you can move in sudden swaying ways. You gain the following benefits. When you're prone, you can stand up by spending 5 feet of movement rather than half. Makes narrative sense. I don't know if you've seen a lot of martial arts, but when a decent like a very important part of drunken style is they fall over as if they're drunk, and then they immediately get back up or kick you from being down. You know, it's part of the whole thing. Also, they get redirect attack. When a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can spend 1 key point as a reaction to cause that attack to hit a creature of your choice other than the attacker. You can see within 5 feet. Very fun ability. Makes a lot of sense narratively. You knock them into, you dodge in a way that's unnatural and they accidentally hit their friend. Really, really cool. Can't complain about these abilities. Arguably one of the best 6th level abilities we've seen for Monk at this point, in both narrative and actual power. Starting Drunkard's Luck. Starting at 11th level, you always seem to get a lucky bounce at the right moment. When you make an ability check, an attack roll, or a saving throw, and have disadvantage on the roll, you can spend 2 key points to just not have disadvantage. Interesting. I don't really understand the narrative reason behind this ability, but I think it's cool. I guess the logic is that you're like a drunken guy, so like people like you have those like maybe you're lucky. I don't know. I'll be honest. I can't figure it out. But this will come up occasionally. The DM will be like, "Oh God, this is a really really hard situation." So you're going to be at a disadvantage because it's going to be really hard to convince this guy, and you go, "Okay, I spend 2 key points. I don't have disadvantage." It'll come up. Um, Again, like I said for the other abilities, it's not sparking anything, but it's not bad. Finally, Intoxicated Frenzy. At 17th level, you gain the ability to make an overwhelming number of attacks against a group of enemies. When you use a flurry of blows, you can make up to 3 additional attacks up with it, up to a total of 5 if you use flurry of blows. What? When you use... Oh, I get it. Sorry, didn't read again. When you use the flurry of blows... When you use your flurry of blows... I'm sorry about how I'm reading this. Guess I'm not feeling up to it at the moment. I've always been bad at reading. You can make up to 3 additional attacks with it, and 5 counting the bonus action attacks, provided that each flurry of blow attack targets a different creature this turn. Okay, so extra attacks, but there's a restriction on it. That's very interesting because I guess with the movement ability you have, you're also, when you're using Flurry of Blows, getting that extra bit of movement and you're disengaging. So you can do is you can run in. Using Flurry of Blows, you run in into a middle of a pack, you do Intoxicated Fury, hit them with like 5 attacks, each hitting one of them, effectively doing an AoE attack, and then just run out because you're still disengaged. And you probably, at that point, you've got yourself 70 feet of movement on that turn, assuming you're not getting any bonuses from, magical items, which you would have at that level. Overall, Drunken Master, very, very cool. A lot of cool narrative stuff. Has one of the best middle sort of abilities out of the ones we've seen at the moment. I'm delightfully surprised because I went into Monk expecting there to be a lot of bad ones, because I kind of looked at Monk and went, this is a lot of the time, and I've looked at it and gone, none of these really spark joy. But at this point, these first 4 ones, I could see myself playing. Obviously, Astral Self being the most interesting to me. 4 elements. So you can probably guess what, they won't say the inspiration is, but it was. It was the fucking Avatar, the Legend of Aang, right? The Last Airbender. Fire, earth, water, air. That kind of stuff. Let's have a look. Discipline of the elements. You learn magical disciplines that harness the power of the 4 elements. A discipline requires you to spend key points each time you use it. You know the elemental discipline and 1 other elemental discipline of your choice. You learn an additional one at 6th, 11th, and 12th. When you learn a new one, you can replace an old one. Casting them, that's just casting spells. I'm not going to go into it. As you can see here, you can maximum key point for a spell. It ups when you get up the higher levels. Here's a look at the elemental disciplines. Breath of Winter. You need to be 17th level for this. Spend 6 key points. You cast Cone of Cold. By the way, Cone of Cold is a 5th level spell. Pretty decent spell. Clench of the North Wind. 6th level required. You can spend 3 key points to Hold Person. 2nd level spell. Elemental Achievement. You can use your action to briefly control the elemental force within 30 feet of you. It allows you to do harmless stuff. So you can make harmless sensory effects using the 4 elements. Puff of wind, spray of light, gentle rumbling. You can make snuff out candles. You can chill or warm stuff. You can cause you can make it into a crew design. Very similar to like Thaumaturge and stuff, except for a couple of narrative abilities. Eternal Mountain Defense. You can spend 5 key points to cast Stone Skin, targeting yourself. Fangs of the Fire Snake. When you take an attack action, you can spend 1 key point to cause Tendrils of Flames to stretch out from your fists and feet. Your reach with your unarmed strikes increases by 10 feet, as well as the rest of the turn. Yep. A hit with such an attack deals fire damage instead of bludgeoning. If you spend 1 key point when the attack hits, it deals an additional 1d10. So not only do you have to spend a key point to put it on, you also need to spend a key point to increase the damage. You have Fist of the Four Thunder. You can cast Thunder Wave with 2 key points. Flame of the Phoenix. You cast Fireball for 4 key points. Gong of the Summit. You can cast Shatter for 3 key points. You can sort of guess what a lot of them are like. Mist Stance is Gaseous Form for 4 key points. Ride the Wind is Fly for 4 key points. River of Hungry Flames is Wall of Fire for 5 key points. Rush of Gale Spirits is Gust of Wind for 2 key points. Shape of the Flowing Shape of the flowing river. As an action, you can spend 1 key point to choose an area of ice or water no larger than 30 feet on a side within 120 feet of you. You can change the water to ice within the area and vice versa. You can reshape the ice in the area in any manner you choose. You can raise or lower the ice elevation, create or fill in a trench, erect or flatten a wall, or form a pillar. The extent of such changes cannot exceed the area's largest dimension. For example, if you erect a 30-foot square, you can't create a pillar up to 15 foot high, raise or lower the square's elevation by 15 foot, dig a trench up to 15 foot deep, and so on, so forth. It allows you to control ice and turn water into ice. You also get a burning hands for 2 key point. Then you also have unbroken air. Create a blast of compressed air that strikes like a mighty fist. As an action, you spend 2 key points and choose a creature within 30 feet of you. The creature must succeed on a strength saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 3d10 bludgeoning damage plus an extra 1d10 bludgeoning damage for each additional key point you spend. And you can push the creature up to 20 feet from you and knock it prone. On a success, they take half as much and are not knocked prone. Water Whip. You can spend 2 key points as an action to create a whip of water that shoves and pulls the creature to unbalance it. The creature that you can see within 30 feet of you must succeed on a dex saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 3d10 bludgeoning damage plus an additional 1d10 bludgeoning damage for each additional key point you spend. You can either knock it prone or pull it 25 feet closer to you. On a successful save, they take half as much damage and they're not knocked prone. And then finally, Wall of Stone for 6 key points. As you can see, and there are cast spells with key points, and then occasionally, just dipped in between them, there are unique abilities that they can do. My opinion on this is that all of these abilities that are to do with spells are severely overcosted. And I believe that all of these abilities that say you can cast spells using key points shouldn't have been there, and they should have spent the time to write interesting abilities like they did for Shape of the Flowing Water, like they did for Unbroken Air, like they did for Fang of the Fire Snake. For all of these abilities, have 4 for fire, 4 for air, 4 for water, 4 for earth. And I think it would have been really interesting. Instead of just sort of like half-arsing it and just making it so you're a sort of half-caster. I don't like this ability at all. I'm not a big fan of the 4 elements monk in general. At 11th level, completely skipped 6th level, by the way, which is a bit weird. You learn an additional elemental discipline of your choice. You should know 3 elemental disciplines at this point. When you learn a new elemental discipline, you can replace it with another one. So even though we've missed 6th level, never mind, 6th level is the exact same thing. All its abilities are just getting additional spell things, which would be cool if these narratively had sense to them. But they're all just boring. It just makes you... All the things that make you a magic caster, their abilities aren't just you get more spells. They're other abilities. Like off the top of my head, I remember the magic rogue, the arcane trickster. I remember one of his abilities being that its mage hand is invisible. Like little narrative things that make sure that you have more form to them. A really interesting way I think they could have gone with this. And I'm annoyed they didn't. What they could have done is gone, as I said before with these abilities, have 4 for each of the elements that do interesting and cool things. One of them maybe is utility, maybe it allows you to move these elements. One of them is, like the fangs of the fire snake, which turns your fists on fire, so you do fire damage and you can add more fire damage. One of them produces maybe a bunch of jagged spikes out of the ground that do a bunch of damage bunch of piercing damage to you and leave difficult terrain in that area for a minute. Things like that. And like maybe the difficult terrain doesn't affect you because you made it. I think it would be really interesting. And then these later abilities, maybe the 6th level ability is something sort of innocuous, like maybe it just inherently makes it so that you can choose what element your fists are because you're so in tune to your power. And then this 11th level ability, I'd have it as like, okay, you've learned now individually the 4 elements, and now you've learned maybe maybe you've learned like an additional a couple abilities. I'm gonna say maybe like 4, but realistically I'd want 8. You know, like realistically I'd want every combination, which would be more than 8, but I know they can't do that. And it would be like sorry about that. Sorry, somebody just messaged me, so I was replying back to it. And I have it where they are combinations of the 2 elements. So it's you learn using fire and earth, and you have a magma-based ability. You're using air and water, and it's like a whirlpool-based ability. Maybe even lightning, depending on how you see water and air being combined. You know, you have fire and water, and its ability that produces a mist, like a magical mist that you can't see through. And then the final ability would be something that maybe gives you a form that you can go into, or maybe it makes it's like a final couple of abilities that are like, this is using all of your abilities. I think they went the wrong way with this, and I think because of it, they're not going to get a lot of people playing it. In my opinion, I think this is the worst subclass that we've seen, and it might be the worst subclass we do see. Kensei. This one, for the longest time, was effectively the weapon monk. The one that allowed you to use a weapon that wasn't a monk weapon. Now, interestingly enough, since then, Tasha allowed everybody to dedicate a weapon, and so this lost its uniqueness in that aspect, but I'm interested to see if it still has enough uniqueness to it. So, Kensei weapon. You choose 2 types of weapons. They're your Kensei weapons. One's melee, one's ranged. Each of them can be any simple or martial weapon that lacks a heavy or special property. The longbow is also a valid choice, because I think they wanted you to be able to play it as kind of like a traditional samurai that also has, you know, the longbow. You gain proficiency with these weapons if you don't already have it. Weapons of the chosen type are monk weapons for you. Many of the tradition's features work only with your Kensei weapons. When you hit certain levels, you can choose another one. You also get, if you make an unarmed strike as part of an attack action on your turn, and are holding a Kensei weapon, you can use it to defend yourself. If it's a melee weapon, you get +2 AC until the start of your turn, while the weapon is in your hand and you aren't incapacitated. So, you do an attack with your basic weapon, and as a part of that attack, you just do another unarmed attack that you get as a bonus action. If you've done that, you get +2 AC. Not bad. You also get Kensei Shot. You can use your bonus action on your turn to make your ranged attack with a Kensei weapon more deadly. When you do so, any target you hit with a ranged attack using a Kensei weapon takes an additional 1d4 of your weapon's type. You retain this benefit until the end of the current turn. So not only does this just give you an extra d4, it gives you an extra d4 on every attack you do, which is quite interesting, because it means that you get this little bit of extra damage that you sort of are not going to normally get, because It's sort of replacing the fact you'd get a bonus action on armed attack. Which is interesting because it allows you to do ranged attacks without it being as big of a deal. I quite like that, honestly. And you also get calligraphy tools and painting supplies. This is sort of what I was talking about when I was like, I feel like to a certain extent Kensei Monk was made to be at least close enough to a samurai that you could play a samurai. At 6th level, you extend your ki into your Kensei weapons, granting you the following benefits. Your attacks with your Kensei weapons count as magical for the purposes of overcoming resistances and immunities to non-magical attacks and damage. So you get magical attacks. That's fine. That's useful. When you hit a target with a Kensei weapon, you can spend 1 ki point to cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target equal to your martial art die. So you can effectively double your damage. Although at this point it would just be adding a little bit extra. But later on it will be about effectively doubling your damage. That's not bad. Little extra damage ability. It's not particularly interesting, but it's not particularly bad. I will say, the big thing with Kensei Monk was this first Kensei weapon ability. When you take that away, the 3rd level ability isn't too interesting, in my opinion. And neither is this. It's not uninteresting, but it's not that interesting. At 11th level, you gain the ability to augment your weapon further with your ki. As a bonus action, you can spend up to 3 ki points to grant one Kensei weapon you touch a bonus to attack and damage rolls when you attack with it. The bonus equals the number of ki points you spent. The bonus lasts for a minute or until you use this feature again. The feature has no effect on a magic weapon that already has a bonus to attack and damage rolls. I think this ability is very, very bad. Because at 11th level, I'd expect myself to at least have a magical weapon that I use predominantly because it's better than my other weapons. The fact that I can't add that bonus to that weapon makes this ability a lot worse, in my opinion. In fact, it makes this ability borderline, I'd say borderline useless. I guess the logic could be that if you have, say at 11th level you have a +2 weapon, which I don't think is unrealistic. You could have a backup weapon that you sharpen as a bonus action using 3 ki points to make it effectively a +3 weapon, and then you attack with that +3 weapon and it's technically a bonus. But you spent 3 ki points to get +1 to your attack and damage. And that's it. I don't know if that's worth it. I guess the logic is you have a load of weapons and there's a weapon for each sort of scenario, and all of those then would have +3. Yeah, I guess with weapons such as that, I guess would work, but I mean, this wasn't made with that in mind, right? Is there weapons like that in the base game? I thought there was a weapon you made specifically for your campaign. But now that I think about it, I guess the case is you're supposed to have a load of weapons. Okay, I didn't realize that. It sounded futuristic. I guess the logic is you'd have like, say, a samurai, a katana, a spear, a bow, and you use them in specific contexts. Like you want extra reach, so you go with the spear. You want range, so you go with the bow, and not all of them are going to be magical. And this goes, well, all of them at base can be a +3. I guess that's the logic. I don't know. It's a bit iffy to me. Finally, there's unerring accuracy. At 17th level, your mastery of weapons grants you extraordinary accuracy. If you miss with an attack roll using a monk weapon on your turn, you can re-roll it. You can use this feature only once on each of your turns. So every one of your turns you get a re-roll, but it's with a class that specifically has a lot of attacks. That's not bad. I feel like it's a bit lackluster for a 17th level ability. But it will come up in literally every combat situation, every turn. Because statistically you will, fail a roll at some point. And it doesn't use your reaction, so it's not too bad. I think in general for the Kensei Monk, I think the biggest problem it has is that its ability is supposed to make the subclass unique. Like the ability that's supposed to get you on board. Like the Astral Self has the cool arms that do force damage. You got the Way of the Dragon that allows you to do a breath weapon with your arms. Its big ability was, hey, I can use martial weapons. And have no, as if they're monk weapons. That was its big sort of that's what makes me different to all the other monks. But since Tasha came around and you have this optional feature, it kind of makes it so that Kensei has lost a lot of its flavor. It's lost a lot of its uniqueness. These other abilities aren't bad, but when you lose the front-loaded ability that you get at level 3, I think it makes the Kensei Monk pretty bad. Not 4 elements bad, but I think pretty bad. Long Death. So Long Death is got an even earlier one. This is a Sword Coast one. So at 3rd level, your study of death allows you to extract vitality from another creature as it nears its demise. When you reduce a creature within 5 feet of you to 0 hit points, you gain 10 hit points equal to your wisdom modifier plus your monk level. So at base, you're probably going to have, say, a +2, and you'll be 3rd level, so you're getting +5 temp hit points every time you knock somebody to 0. But obviously they don't stack on top of each other, so it's only refreshing the 5. Early on, say you're fighting a pack of goblins, this will be useful. I mean, the pack of goblins, maybe they hit you maybe once or twice, and maybe you blank one of their attacks because you killed one of them earlier and you have temp hit points. It's a cool ability. I think you can see really obviously that some of the later stuff front-loaded their abilities a lot more. I feel like if this was made nowadays, that would be one of its abilities, and then in addition to it, it would get an out-of-combat ability, or an additional combat ability that is unique to it, like your attacks doing necrotic damage, or something where it's as a bonus action you can cast Spare the Dying, or something. Something narratively that would be interesting, but maybe wouldn't be would be at this sort of power level. Yeah, early on it's really, really good, because if you find a pack of goblins, it's every time you're probably killing them every turn. Yeah, it's not bad, and its scaling isn't bad. If you're thinking about it, if you're fighting a load of weak stuff, even at level 20, you're finding a lot of stuff that's sort of weak at that level. You're getting what is it, 25 extra health? That's pretty huge even at 20th level. I think the only thing I see that's sort of a problem with it is that I've seen with all the others, especially the later ones, that this 3rd level ability very much defines how the subclass goes, and it's sort of everything is based on it, and it fundamentally changes how you play the monk. This one, to me, is a bit not as good at that, in my opinion. I think it's a cool ability, don't get me wrong, and it does give you, as you said, a very notable survival buff. At 6th level, you gain the ability to unsettle and terrify those around you as an action, for your soul has been touched by the shadow of death. When you take this action, each creature within 30 feet of you that you can see must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be frightened. So you get AoE. You can't target it to not hit allies. Frighten. You're getting it early level, so it's going to be more useful than it will be later on. Your DC will be, what is it? What's the DCs normally? 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your wisdom bonus. So it's probably going to be your 6th level, so your proficiency bonus is a +3. So it's +3. 8 plus 3 is 11, plus your wisdom bonus, which modifier, which will probably be +3 at that point. So it'll be 14. DC 14 AoE Frighten that can hit allies. I guess the logic here is that you're supposed to get your character surrounded. So you've got the survivability of taking at least one of them out each turn, and then you're surrounded, and then you use your action, and it's a big AoE Frighten. But it's 30 feet. That's huge, and it's probably going to hit your allies, unless you are the only front line, or you jumped ahead and it's a big map. So I feel like that's a bit of a liability. In addition, I've been bringing this up before. I don't particularly rate Frightened later game. Later game, I feel like a lot of abilities, a lot of creatures, and sure, most of the time it's the bosses, but I feel like a lot of creatures just in general start getting either immunities to Frightened or become very resistant to Frightened because DMs don't particularly want the encounters to be, yeah, as you said there, but either DMs or the way the monsters are used, a lot of the time they are made and they want to use them, so they give them immunities or strong resistances to Frightened. It is a good defensive tool, but it's a defensive tool that can hit. Realistically, the later you go on, the more it becomes a liability, because it's going to hit allies as well. Yeah, it's so great that they don't want to. Most DMs don't want to give it to you. It's like stunning them. It's like such a good ability. At 11th level, you can use your familiarity with death to escape its grasp. When you are reduced to 0 hit points, you can expend 1 key point to have 1 hit point instead. That is a very cool ability. Especially since when you're hitting 11th level, you have 11 key points. 11 key points gives you a lot of key points to just go, actually I'm back up. And all of those attacks, I withstood them. Especially since, increasingly, the higher level you get, the more that it's not really the amount of health that matters, it's just that you can get your turn in. You are especially later on in boss fights, people aren't able to heal you enough to actually survive an attack, and so what they're actually trying to do is to make you survive long enough that you can get your next turn, and that they can heal you up to get your turn after the fact. And this is such a good survivability tool, especially if you expend your 1 key point and you're still up, and then you happen to kill another enemy before the big guy attacks you, and you quickly bump yourself up with 10 hit points, and so maybe you survive a attack, maybe not. There is a obviously notable problem with this, in the sense that I guess it's not really a problem because it means but you most of the time you'll get hit and they'll probably have another attack ready for you at 1 hit point. And most of the time, most DMs would go, if you were down, they wouldn't go for you anymore. They'd go for someone else, unless the enemy specifically is about killing, the party. But I guess you're still taking a hit for maybe your potential backline. I quite like this ability. In fact, I think this is my favorite ability they've gotten at the moment. Um, it's very powerful. I know why it's at 11th level, but I quite like this ability. 17th level. Starting at 17th level, your touch can channel the energy of death into a creature. As an action, you touch one creature within 5 feet of you, and you expend 1 to 10 key points. Target must succeed on a con save, and it takes 2d10 necrotic damage per key point spent on a failed save, and half as much in a successful save. This is a very cool ability in my opinion, because it not only does it do something that I feel like a lot of the earlier subclasses don't do, which is it guarantees damage through even though you're spending key points. Because a lot of the time you'll see situations where it'll say something like this as an ability, and it'll say like you spend 10 key points to do an attack that does 2d10 necrotic damage, but if it misses, it misses, and you spend those key points and it doesn't do anything. But this one instead goes, nah, it's a saving throw, so they at least take half. So even if you spend 10 key points and they succeed on the con save, at the very least you're still getting half of the damage. You haven't wasted anything. My least favourite thing, especially for martial classes, is when they have an ability that they can put all of their effort into and spend whatever resource they have to use, and it misses and it does nothing, and you're just sat there just going like, well, I feel useless. That felt like it did nothing. That's why I always actually focus onto saving throws abilities, because not only does it feel less of a problem when it's the onus is on the enemy to make this roll, but also most of them say you still do damage even if it fails. But yeah, I like this ability quite a lot. I think I prefer the 11th and 17th ability over the 6th and the 3rd level ability. I think, which in hindsight is a problem, because you'd want the cool abilities to be earlier. I think this might just be a problem of me looking at all of the, just it happens to be that all of the newer ones are, a lot of the newer ones are alphabetically first, because this ability, it feels so weak when you look at some of the other abilities, and so less impactful. And I think that is just a product of it being one of the earlier subclasses. I don't hate the long death. It's not at the point where I think it's boring. I just feel like if I was playing Ascendant Dragon or Astral Self or Cobalt Soul, even Drunken Master to a certain point, I would immediately at 3rd level feel like I'm having at least a different experience of playing a monk than if I had played monk again previous time. Whereas with Long Death, I would just feel like I'm playing a generic monk until I got to 11th level. And then 11th level, I would be like, okay, I can sort of see how I play differently. I stay in combat, I have this incredible amount of survivability that I was seeing at 3rd level, but it wasn't sort of giving me the flavour of the class enough. Overall, I think it's better than 4 Elements and Kensei at this point, but I don't think it's up there with the first 4 I did. Way of Mercy. Gain proficiency. Sorry, Implements of Mercy. You gain proficiency in insight and medicine skills, and you gain proficiency with a herbalism kit. Makes sense. They're all stuff that are related to the class you've chosen. You also gain a special mask, which you often wear when using the feature of the subclass. I like giving you options. I like the fact that they've sort of, with this subclass, they're sort of towing the line between the more Eastern looking, more Eastern style monk and the more kind of like plague doctor-y thing. which is an interesting way to go for Monk, which most of the time has just been more the sort of Eastern style. Hand of Healing. Your Mystic Touch can mend wounds. As an action, you can spend 1 key point to touch a creature and restore a number of hit points equal to a roll of your hit die plus your Wisdom modifier. When you use Flurry of Blows, you can replace one of your unarmed strikes with the use of this feature without expending a key point. Interesting. So this sort of prioritizes you actually spending it as a Flurry of Blows and also helping your friend. But also just gives you this straight up healing that you would not normally get as a monk. I quite like it, except for the Tasha feature. I think you can spend key points to heal yourself. Yeah, there it is, quickened healing. Spend 2 key points to heal yourself, but you can't heal other people. This is the sort of ability I was sort of talking about with Way of Death. Or is it Way of Long Death? Yeah, Way of Long Death. Where this ability, this 3rd level ability here, immediately sets the scene of what kind of subclass you have, what kind of character you'll be playing. You'll be playing a monk, but the unique part of this subclass is that you can heal, something you can't normally do. Also, the Implements of Mercy seems to help in that. I mean, that's just narratively it's very cool, but at the end of the day, it's just skill proficiencies. That's why I sort of didn't talk about that one very much. I quite like this feature. I like the fact that it incentivizes you using Flurry of Blows, which I feel implies that this class is not just all about healing. You know, it's not just a one-sided I just heal. It also realizes that in addition to healing, it needs the ability to also harm the enemy. As seen, I think, by the Hand of Harm ability you also get. Your key, you use your key to inflict wounds. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you can spend 1 key point to deal an extra necrotic damage equal to 1 roll of your martial art die plus Wisdom modifier. You can use this feature only once per turn. That's a not insignificant increase to damage, especially 3rd level. You're hitting them, you're doing a d6, so a d4, more if you're using a weapon, which a lot of people at this point would probably be doing, because it does more damage. Depends on narratively what you want to do. But you hit them, you do a d4 like you normally do, but you spend a key point, and you also do an extra d4 plus your Wisdom modifier. Plus your Wisdom modifier would already be on your actual damage, your base damage, because, you know, you're proficient in unarmed. So you'd effectively be rolling the attack twice, plus with all the features, which is kind of like giving you an extra attack. That's a very cool ability. It's arguably better than doing an extra attack, except you can't use it on another person. Overall, these 3rd level abilities, yeah, but what I was thinking is would you not use your weapons? Oh yeah, because it says when you hit it with an unarmed strike. That is actually notable. It doesn't affect yeah. It won't scale on the weapon, and actually I don't think you can use the Hand of Harm on an attack you've used your weapon on. It'd have to be an unarmed strike. But yeah, it wouldn't scale on your it wouldn't like scale with the martial art die. But yeah, I like those abilities because they all encapsulate what's unique about that subclass. At 6th level, you gain 1 feature granted by your monastic tradition. You can administer even greater cures with a touch if you feel it's necessary. You can use your knowledge to cause harm. When you use the Hand of Healing on a creature, you can end 1 disease or one of the following conditions affected by it. So it kind of becomes lesser restoration. I think that's just lesser restoration in addition to your healing. Yeah, and it's lesser restoration. And then when you use Hand of Harm, you can subject the creature to the poison condition, which I've mentioned this many times in the other streams, isn't a great condition. Well, let me rephrase that. It is a great condition. It's a very powerful condition if you can get it off. Not a lot of creatures. You can, yeah, when it works, it works. It really is good when it works. But undead, elementals, a lot of angels, a lot of fiends, most most like monstrosities, all will have immunities to the poison condition. And I'm talking, especially with undead, almost all of them, even like early level zombies, I think might even have the immunity. Overall, though, this healing one, really, really useful. Narratively, the fact that you can also use it for harm is very cool, and when it works, it will be very, very good. So I don't mind that ability. Most of the time, 6th level abilities are a bit underwhelming, but that one's not that underwhelming. 11th level, Flurry of Healing and Harm. You can mete out a flurry of comfort and hurt. That you've just changed the word there. Anyway, when you use Flurry of Blows, you can now replace each of your unarmed strikes with a use of your Hand of Healing without spending key points for the healing. Shit, that's decent. In addition, when you make an unarmed strike with your Flurry of Blows, you can use Hand of Harming with that strike without expending. Jesus! You can use the Healing Hand thing more than once a turn. But you can only use the Hand of Harming once per turn. Because I guess it would be like, why wouldn't you just use that every turn? That's so powerful. What? Because in the background this whole time, your Hand of Harming and your Hand of Healing are just getting buffed. Because your martial art die is getting buffed. Not by a huge amount, but like it's not insignificant. Like it was a D4 at the start, and now it would be at 11th level. It would be a D8, making it all 0. Right, Owen. I expected this ability to appear. I expected it to be the last ability. I'm a bit worried about what that last ability is now, because this is wacky and maybe it might be. Yeah, whatever. You know what's weird about Steam Labs? For the longest time, it said I've had one viewer, so I'm pretty sure that viewer count is just not working. Because you haven't been watching the whole time. So I don't. As far as I know, you're the only person here. But yeah, that's a wacky ability. If anything, it might be a bit too powerful. But I don't know. I'm not very good at scaling this stuff. But that to me feels like a 17th level ability. Yeah. Hand of Ultimate Mercy. Your mastery of life energy opens the door to the ultimate mercy. As an action, you can touch the corpse of a creature that died within 24 hours and expend 5 key points. The creature then returns to life, regaining a number of hit points equal to 4d10 plus your wisdom modifier. And if the creature died while subject to any of the following conditions, lesser restoration conditions, it gets rid of them. I'm surprised, honestly. I kind of just assumed all of these conditions disappeared when you died. But I guess they don't, because this rule exists. I guess if you still got poison in your veins when you die, and then you revived, you still have poison in your veins. Yeah, it just never really comes up normally. There's an argument that this ability, which by the way kind of seems, it's a good ability, but after what I just saw, kind of seems a bit underwhelming. You know what I mean? It's just it, the 11th level ability was just so scary that so powerful that this one doesn't seem powerful to me. But I guess there's a situation here where, yeah, that's true. But the paladins get, I think they get theirs at like 18th or something. Like it's pretty late. Yeah, they like to front load stuff, I think, or they've sort of just realised that a lot of people don't get to level 20 or like the later levels, so they've put stuff like the what you'd expect a capstone feature they've put at like 11th, because most people get to like level 12 and then they finish. Um, this ability is funny because it I could see a situation now where you're in a big boss fight and you're talking to your friends and it's like, right, I need to hit you and kill you so that I can revive you because it's actually more action efficient for me. So can somebody kill our friend that's on the floor dying so that I can then revive them? I don't think that comes up much, but I think it's quite funny that it could come up. Especially with how free the hand of healing is at the moment. Yeah, it's honestly a bit disappointing after what I've seen. I would have liked this ability to also have the sort of reverse that you see with all the other abilities, where it also has a harm specific one, where maybe it's like instead of you reviving somebody and giving them all this extra health and stuff, it was like you do the equivalent but you hurt somebody with this amount, and then you can put one of these conditions on them. Although putting stunned on them might be a bit overpowered, but it's a once per long rest ability. So I feel like you could easily have had, to fit with the sort of narrative theme you were doing, have one which said like spend 5 key points, hit somebody, it does an extra 4d10 necrotic damage plus your wisdom modifier, and if you succeed on hitting them, you put one of these on. You put like blinded, deafened, paralyzed, poisoned, or stunned on them. It feels like a real break of the theme, where every other time there's been a heal one and there's been a harm one, and then they just go, capstone feature doesn't have a harm one, which is a bit weird. Overall, Mercy, bloody powerful, has a load of features. It has its own sort of niche that it fits into. I quite like it. I think based on what I've seen, I think it might be the most powerful monk at this point. And I could be completely wrong because I'm really bad at figuring out balance, but it seems very, very powerful. Next is Open Hand. Open Hand is the generic one, but that's not a bad thing because is it? It's quite famously good. Okay, that makes sense. I guess you're supposed to sort of been held back by the fact that you're supposed to like kind of be a doctor. Yeah, Open Hand is kind of whack. Just because it's the generic one doesn't mean it's bad. Quite the contrast. It's probably the best of the player handbook one. Sorry about that. I talk a lot. I get a cough. Open hand technique. You can manipulate your enemy's ki when you harness your own. When you hit a creature with one of your attacks granted by your flurry of blow, you can impose one of the following effects on the target. It must succeed on a dex saving throw or be knocked prone. Do not knock that ability. Knocking people prone is really, really useful. It must make a strength save. If it fails, you can push them 15 feet away from you. Again, that'll come up. Not as much as the prone thing, but being able to maybe knock them off a cliff, very, very useful. Or it can't take reactions until the end of your next turn. Pretty fucking huge, because it means you're effectively getting a disengage in addition. In addition to doing your flurry of blows, you're getting a disengage. And a disengage on anyone specifically dealing with this guy. Yeah, very, very powerful ability. Even though it's only one ability, and you'd think that I'd have a similar opinion to the Long Death, it does so much, and it really puts into focus that the open hand, what the open hand technique's all about, which is I'm going to buff your fists to extreme proportions. As I said when I was reading it out, knocking them prone is very, very huge. You knock them prone, if you're early on in the turn, all of your friends now get advantage if they're melee. That's huge. Advantage is huge. They also have to spend half of their movement getting up, unless they have, a very specific thing. And which is very useful because you can just like, if you're in a situation where they're trying to catch one of your friends, they're constantly trying to get your backline into melee combat with them. Now you've made it extremely hard for them. Even if they decide to run past you and take an attack of opportunity, they still only have half movement. The push one, as I said, it won't come up a lot, but when it comes up, it'll be game breaking. If you happen to have lava in this, in an evil castle, or you're on an airship, or I don't know, you're climbing a giant beanstalk. All these little things that you think will never come up, but they'll come up. Like, statistically, if you're playing a game, you'll come up to like an evil castle, an airship, or maybe like a beanstalk or something at some point. Some situation where being able to push somebody off is almost an insta kill. And this goes, you can potentially insta kill the guy. And what's interesting is you can put this on every attack. Because it says when you hit a creature with one of your attacks, you can impose one of these effects. Now, it says granted by your flurry of blows, so I think it can only be the bonus action 2 attacks you get, because they're the only ones that are added. Granted, technically, by your flurry of blows. I could be wrong on that, because I'm not incredible with the rules on this stuff. But with one of the attacks granted by your flurry of blows, to me implies that it has to be the bonus action attacks, but I could be wrong. And I don't think I've seen people play it like that, so I probably am wrong. At 6th level, you gain the ability to heal yourself. As an action, you gain hit points equal to 3 times your monk level. You must finish a long rest before you can use this feature again. So, looking at this feature, at base when you get it, it heals you for, what is that? Quick maths in the head, 18 hit points. And this ability here, you spend 2 key points, and you roll a martial art die, and you heal for that much. So it's much, much better than that ability, and it always will be. So, you know what? I expected when I started that sentence for this old subclass to be outdone by an optional feature. But you know what? It isn't. This is kind of like a second wind, except it's not on the fighter. It'll be useful. I think a lot of the time you'll be using it out of combat to get yourself ready for a fight where you can't get a short rest. Later level, I mean, it's scale, so later levels it's going to be pretty decent. The problem is I don't think you want to be using your action at any point to be doing this in combat, because you're effectively wasting your turn for like a bit of heal. I could be wrong, of course. Tranquility. At 11th level, you can enter a special meditation that surrounds you with an aura of peace. At the end of a long rest, you can gain the effect of Sanctuary, which is you ward a creature within range against attack. Until the spell ends, any creature who targets the warded creature with an attack or a harmful spell must first make a wisdom save. On a failed save, they choose a new target. The spell lasts until your next long rest. The spell save is your key DC. Okay. Interesting. It allows you to effectively make someone else a bit more tanky. And I think it can be dispelled as normal. I could be wrong. But the fact it lasts until long rest is very interesting. So you're just giving a buff to an ally. Can this be done on yourself? Oh, it can be done on yourself. Never mind. I think you're supposed to cast this on yourself. So it's just a general buff to yourself, where they just sometimes just can't hit you if they fail a save. That's actually quite useful. I think that's actually kind of a sleeper powerful ability. I guess the logic is, do you follow concentration rules? It says you gain the effect of the spell, but it doesn't say you gain... Oh no, there. Never mind, I need to read more. It's not as good as I thought, but it's not bad. And then there's Quivering Palm. You gain the ability to set up lethal vibrations in someone's body. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you can spend 3 key points to start the imperceptible vibrations, which last for a number of days equal to your monk level. So at this point, it would last 17 days. They're harmless unless you use your action to end them. To do so, you and the target must be on the same plane of existence. When you use this action, the creature must make a Constitution saving throw. If it fails, it is reduced to 0 hit points. And if it succeeds, it takes 10d10 necrotic damage, which for a lot of creatures probably means it does also hit 0 hit points. You can only have one creature under the effect of this feature, under the effect of this feature at a time. You can choose to end the vibrations harmlessly without using an action. What's very, very powerful about this ability is not only is it really cool narratively, because you can literally do the Omaro Shindaru ability, where you're already dead, and you just blow them up. But in addition, this can just be a 3 key point. Either you're dead, or you take 10d10. It just takes 3 key points, and at 17th level, you've got 17 key points. You can do that so many times. It makes your fists do 10d10 damage. Admittedly, you only do that once, and then your next turn you have to use your action to end it. Although, oh no, never mind. So it's not too bad. It takes 2 turns to do 10d10 or kill them, and you're probably doing that. It's not as good as I thought it was, but it's not bad. You spend 1 turn, you hit them, you add the little vibrations for 3 key points, you do all your damage like normal. You know, it goes round, it's your turn again, and you just simply go, I use my action to end the quivering. And you're just like, cool. Use a legendary resistance, or have a chance of either you're going to use your legendary resistance, you're going to succeed on it and take 10d10 damage, or you're going to die. And eventually they'll run out of legendary resistances, and especially if you're using Stunning Strike over and over and over again to get rid of all of their freaking legendary resistances. With this fucking OP ability that every DM seems to hate, not only are you just constantly getting rid of them with the Stunning Strike, then you go in with this, and it's like, cool, if you fail, you're dead. That's insane. As you can see, even though I called it generic, it's not bad. It's actually very, very, very good. It's better than Long Death, it's better than Kensei, it's better than 4 Elements. I think it loses out in flavour to the others, and like cool abilities. But I think in terms of power level, it's still up there. In fact, it might be second. Next is Shadow. You can use your key to duplicate the effect of certain spells. As an action, you can spend 2 key points to cast Darkness, Dark Vision, Pass Without a Trace, or Silence. Great. I don't know if you said something and it got censored, or whether you censored yourself on purpose. Without the material components, you also gain Minor Illusion. Looking at these spells, Darkness. Not really going to come up much, in my opinion. Dark Vision, Borderline will never come up. Pass Without a Trace is not bad, and Silence will come up occasionally. I don't particularly care for this. I really wish that this ability instead was more stealthy, like just a stealth ability, or even just something like I know the Ranger got an optional feature later on that was like, as a bonus action, you can turn yourself like invisible, but only as long as you don't move. Something like that. Just a stealth-related ability that wasn't just I can cast spells. I personally, unless the class is specifically around it, I dislike these I can just cast spells. Yeah, I know. Darkness, unless you have a specific one that says you can see through the darkness, is a borderline useless spell. I feel like Pass Without a Trace and Silence will get some use, and Dark Vision, almost always your players will have Dark Vision. Shadow Step. At 6th level, you gain the ability to step from one shadow into another. When you are in dim light or darkness, as an action you can teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space you can see within that is also in dim light or darkness. You then have advantage on the first melee attack you make before the end of your turn. Yeah, it can be used for blocking off sight lines, but I'll be honest, maybe I'm dumb, and that's entirely possible. I am quite dumb in these strategic situations. I personally never see a situation where like blocking off sight lines actually really helps, more than it hinders the melee people. Well, and not just the melee people a lot of the time, actually the ranged as well. This teleport ability, yeah, I guess it does strongly depend on the layout. You'd kind of hope that your DM maybe slightly changes the layout, knowing what your class is, to maybe get some use out of it, but that's something you'd hope. I wouldn't actually expect a DM to go above and beyond to do that kind of stuff. They've already got enough on their plate. I like this teleport ability. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded this teleport ability being its 3rd level ability instead of this. And instead of what I got. Gives you a teleport, very useful, gives you advantage on your next attack, makes complete sense. It's not as useful as you'd see on like a rogue, because you've got so many attacks. I can see what you mean by saying it's disappointing. At this point, I haven't read through all of it, but at this point I can see it's not sparking joy at this point. The 3rd level ability, which I feel like should define the subclass, doesn't interest me that much. But generally I'm not a big fan of subclasses that all they do is add magic and they don't give you any cool abilities that are around using that magic. I don't mind this Shadow Step ability. It's not bad, it's not good. At 11th level, you've learned to become one with the shadows. When you're in an area of dim light or darkness, you can use your action to become invisible. Oh. So they do get that kind of ability later on. You remain invisible until you make an attack, cast a spell, or in an area of bright light. That's... Oh, it's a strictly worse invisibility. But you get as many times as you want. But it's an action, so you're using your action. And it's an 11th level ability? And already if you've teleported, you'd have advantage, so the invisibility doesn't help you that much? But like, I guess out of combat this isn't bad. I guess. Ugh. That could have been greater invisibility, and I still would be a bit iffy on this whole ability. It's an 11th level ability. Normally they're like the most powerful, because they expect people to only get up to this. God, you really don't have much. Even at this level, if you compare it to the other subclasses, you have nothing. A bunch of spells you're not going to use, a teleport that's not bad, and then just a very, very weak invisibility. Ugh. Opportunist. At 17th level, you can exploit a creature's momentary distraction. When it is hit by an attack, whenever a creature within 5 feet of you is hit by an attack made by a creature other than you, you can use a reaction. What? Why is this a shadow ability? Are you supposed to use your reaction attack to get rid of your invisibility like you've always been there, and then that you've used an action for to then get an advantage reaction attack? I thought you... This feels like a rogue subclass. It's all about getting that one advantage attack, but you're a monk. You're supposed to have multiple attacks. I really don't understand it. No, this is... Narratively, this is the worst one. By a long shot. Like, really bad. Yeah, it's good as a rogue. If you had that, if you took this and you didn't change any of its abilities and you just put it as a rogue subclass, it would be good. In fact, I'm convinced this is a rogue subclass that they put in the wrong class or for some reason. That is so weird. That might be worse than 4 elements for me, and I thought 4 elements was really bad. Gosh, okay, I didn't expect that. Yeah, I mean you can use it constantly, and you're not using your key for much other. I guess the spells, but I don't know. Right, Way of the Sun Soul, or as I like to call it, Way of the Goku, because it immediately all I thought about when I saw this was I want to shoot Ki Blast like Goku. Starting at 3rd level, you can hurl searing bolts of magical radiance. You gain a new attack option when you use the attack action. The special attack is a ranged spell attack with a range of 30 feet. You are proficient with it, and you can add your dex modifier to its attack and damage. Damage is radiant, and its damage die is a d4. The die changes when you gain monk levels as shown in the martial art column. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can use a special attack as part of it. You can spend 1 key point to make the special attack twice as a bonus action when you make the extra attack feature. When you gain the extra attack feature, the special attack can be used for any of the attacks you make as part of an attack action. They could have worded that so much easier by just saying it can be done. It can just be done exactly as if it was as if you were using martial arts. I just feel like they could have made that less jumbled. What was this about? You spend a key point to make a special attack twice as a bonus action. So that's just a special version of that's just a special version of Flurry of Blows, but specifically for the ranged attack. That's it. I mean, it's fine. It gives you a ranged attack. It does, as I said before. What I want from a 3rd level ability is I want it to set the scene of what the subclass is going to be, and that does it. It's going to be ranged. I just feel like they could have worded that so much better, in my opinion. Searing Arc Strike. At 6th level, you gain the ability to channel your ki into a searing wave of energy. Immediately after you take the attack action on your turn, you can spend 2 key points to cast the Burning Hands spell as a bonus action. You can spend additional key points to cast Burning Hands as a higher level spell. Each key point you spend increases the spell level by 1. The maximum number of key points that you can spend on the spell is equal to half your monk level. Okay. See, I was under the impression with that 3rd level ability that it was supposed to be turning the monk into a backline shooter, like a backline ranged combatant that can go to the front line if it needs to. Yeah, it is really a bit weirdly phrased. I think they just didn't realize some generic terms that later on they really did. Um, I this to me feels like it wants you to shoot your spells, then move in, cast Burning Hands, and then move out, taking attacks. Well, I guess you don't need to take attacks of opportunity if you're far enough back. You shoot it, you move closer, you're Burning Hands, and then you move back. How does Burning Hands scale again? Oh, not that well. An extra d6 for every level higher. It's AoE, so realistically, you're getting decent damage out of it no matter what happens. I don't know. I've gone on record as saying is I don't really like abilities that just give you a spell instead of it narratively being something else. I feel like this could have been a ranged attack that did an AoE. And I know they get this later on, but I feel like they could have put it here as a ranged attack does AoE, does the same amount of damage, and it would have fit more. At 11th level, you gain the ability to create an orb of light that erupts in a devastating explosion. As an action, you can create an orb and hurl it at a point you choose within 150 feet. When it erupts into a sphere of radiant, where it erupts into a sphere of radiant light for a brief but deadly instant. Each creature in a 20-foot radius sphere must succeed on a con save or take 2d6 radiant damage. A creature doesn't need to make the save if the creature is behind total cover that is opaque. Okay? You can increase the sphere's damage by spending key points. Each key point you spend to a maximum of 3 increases it by 2d6. It's a very, very long range, which again feels antithesis to the 6th level ability that said you wanted to get close because you want to hit them with Burning Hands. This is a really, really long range Orb of Light that does strictly better than the Burning Hands, but isn't a bonus action, but you're wasting your whole turn. So it doesn't feel worth it unless you're adding key points to it. Or there's a load of people surrounding the area. I don't know. That feels very underwhelming to me. I've looked at this before, and I just felt like they didn't sort of like embody what I expected it to be, where it would be just a bunch of like unique ways you could use your ranged attacks and stuff. This to me, it feels very underwhelming, and it doesn't even have. If this said, for example, and I know I shouldn't be doing the whole. Well, if it said this, I'd think it was good because it's like, well, it doesn't say that. But if this said, just to be narrative, because it's supposed to be radiant light. If it said must succeed on a con save or take 2d6 radiant damage and be blinded, I feel like it would have been fine and it would have made sense and it would have been a lot more powerful and I'd understand it a bit more. But I don't really understand. Like, you spend 3 key and it does 8d6 radiant damage, which isn't insignificant for only 3 extra key, and you're hitting everyone within 20 feet, which is a 20-foot radius is pretty fucking huge. But it just doesn't interest me. Then there's Sun Shield. At 17th level, you become wreathed in luminous magical aura. You shed bright light in a 30-foot radius and dim light an additional 30. Okay, so it's like you got a torch on. You can extinguish or restore the light as a bonus action. Creatures hit with If a creature hits you with a melee attack while the light shines, you can use your reaction to deal radiant damage to the creature. The creature's radiant damage equals 5 plus your wisdom modifier. I don't understand this subclass. I don't understand what it wants, where it wants you to play. Some abilities imply that you should be in the back line. Some abilities imply that you should be in the front line. Some abilities imply that you should be hit by melee attacks, but then your ranged attacks become less effective when you're in melee, so you don't want to be in melee. I really don't understand the flavour behind this. I talked about it a lot with the Spore Druid, in the sense that there was abilities that implied that you should be not in melee, and then there were abilities that gave you bonuses in melee, but you lose the ability when you lose health, so you don't want to be taking hits. And it felt really confused, and I felt like the Tainted Druid, although it didn't go the same way as the Spore Druid, had a much more obvious purpose behind it, with very similar abilities. I think this one has a very, very big problem at like figuring out what it was wanting to be. And because of that, it really loses out. But that was the final of the subclasses, so I'll just go over a quick TLDR of the whole thing. I think Ascended Dragon, Astral Self, Cobalt Soul, Drunken Master, and Open Hand and Mercy are all very, very good subclasses. And some of them, like Open Hand, Mercy, and I think to a certain extent, honestly, Ascended Dragon as well, are very, very powerful. But they all have cool narrative points to them. They all make sense. You all know what you're going to do with them. I'm a bit pissed off that Drunken Master doesn't do the whole thing of like, hey, they don't actually drink when they're doing Drunken Master style. And for some reason just gives you, oh, I know why, but it gives you brewing tools. 4 elements in Kensei. Kensei really falls off because of the fact its main feature became just a feature that monks have. And so all of its other abilities feel generic because you don't have the one that functionally changes how you play the monk. And 4 elements is just overcosted garbage that I feel like they could have reflavored. They could have done really cool things with, because a couple of the abilities that the discipline gives you are like narratives, and the narratively like different. Like they set your hands on fire and you get your attacks become fire damage and you can increase it with ki. Like those abilities are really, really cool. And I think if all of them were those abilities, instead of almost all of them being you can cast a spell using ki, I think it would have been very interesting. But because it isn't that, it's really bad. I think Long Death is too. It doesn't give you an ability that defines it until much, much later. I think Shadow is accidentally a rogue subclass that randomly got to Monk. And Sun Soul just doesn't have. It simply just doesn't have like a purpose to it. It doesn't know where it's supposed to be. Generally, though, having. What is that? Like 7, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 6 out of 9. Nice. Subclasses being good is a pretty good track record. You know, like 2/3 of your subclasses being good and interesting is not bad. I'm thinking back, I'm like, Fighter did pretty well. I think the only ones I didn't really like was Knight and Champion. So I guess that had 2 out of like about 9. Druid, I didn't like. Spores. I guess that was only 1 out. Actually, it's about average. Never mind. Anyway, that'll be the end of it because I've gone past 2 hours. Next time I'll be doing Paladin, which I'm really looking forward to, because as mentioned in chat, it's the only one that has a really cool capstoner feature. It has effectively a super form. Really looking forward to that. I'm really hoping by the time I get through all of these, I actually know what I want to play. instead of just doing these reviews, because I don't think there's anything more I can review. I guess I could do Blood Hunter, but TLDR and Blood Hunter, all of them are pretty bad except for the Ghost one, because it gets rid of their main mechanic and allows them to actually hit half the creatures. Anyway, that's me. It's been fun. Yeah, I've been JD Moss.